When it comes to health and well-being and how we feel about our body, for many people, we tend to really think a lot about our physical aspect and our food from a very restrictive mindset. And so we tend to get into dieting, binge eating, sugar addiction, shaming ourselves, yo-yo dieting, a whole roller coaster of things that doesn't really serve us and doesn't help us be able to live a vibrant and well-balanced life. And so today I am absolutely delighted to dive into this topic with Marcella Friel, who is a transformational mentor. She helps health conscious women love and forgive themselves and really accept what's going on so that they can change their relationship with food. Marcella, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Mira. It's a delight to finally meet you. I've been a big fan of your newsletter. I love it.
Oh, thank you. That is so kind. I love the work that you're doing because I think so many of us get caught in this really negative cycle of how we nourish ourselves on so many different levels.
Mm.
And I know in the work that you do, you had shared some information with me before we hopped on here. You talked about early life conditioning that can set
Mm,
the stage for us to sabotage ourselves, which is a
yeah,
really bad thing when we get older. Can you talk about how that happens and what we really need to be aware of with that?
sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, one of my favorite topics to talk about with the women that I work with is something that I call the secret wisdom of sabotage. And that always kind of raised like, how can there be wisdom in sabotage?
Mhm.
So, first, before we talk about early life conditioning, we have to talk about what is sabotage. So, the way that I like to talk about sabotage is imagine that you're driving from uh, Denver, Colorado to Sacramento, California, let's say, and you're going along Highway 80 and you get to Winnemucca, Nevada, and you say, oh, San Francisco's too far away. I'm never going to make it. And then you turn around and go back to Denver. And you say, no, I got to try again. Okay. Then you go from Denver, you get to Winnemucca and you say, San Francisco's never going to happen. And you turn around. So sabotage is this action of quitting and abandoning ourselves often just as we're about to break through to a next level. So
Mm,
this is something I see a lot with women. They're about to get to their goal weight, or they're starting to feel better in their bodies, or they're loving the woman they see in the mirror. And maybe somebody says, hey, you look fantastic. What are you doing? You look great. And then suddenly it's like, right? Okay, I got to go back into hiding here. And um, so sabotage is basically when we undermine our own progress, and it often happens particularly right before we're about to break through. So in terms of early life conditioning, um, I like to take a page from Gabor Mate. You've probably heard of him. He's very well known. And he likes to talk about the two basic needs that all of us have as human beings, and they are especially important to meet in childhood.
mhm,
And of course, the most important one is the need for attachment. We need to
mhm,
bond. We need to bond to our caregivers, to the adults who are taking care of us. If we don't bond, we don't survive.
mm,
So the attachment need kind of trumps everything else. So the other need is individuation. We need to express ourselves. We need to be creative. We need to, what I like to call, find our upper chakra, sort of purpose. Um, However, these two needs can come into conflict because let's say you disagree with something that mom is telling you to do and you feel angry. And mom, don't you give me that face, young lady, right?
mhm.
Don't
Yeah.
give me that pout. Don't sass at me. So what happens in that moment is that as a child, when a child is in that kind of circumstance, She needs to decide, which way am I going to go? Am I going to go for the individuation, or am I going to continue to hold my attachment, my survival need for attaching to my mother? So oftentimes what will happen is we sacrifice ourselves
Mm,
for the sake of that attachment. So fast forward to adulthood. And here we are, and we're saying, okay, I'm ready to lose 50 pounds. I'm ready to feel better in my body. I'm ready to change my relationship with food and nourish myself. And we go along and we make progress and we feel good. And then something will happen where, like I said earlier, somebody will make a remark,
mhm,
uh, or there's just a feeling that can come up. And it really is like the biggest question. Can I be fulfilled? Can I fulfill those upper chakra desires and still belong to my tribe?
mhm. And,
So
so I have a
yeah.
question for you though, because that's so interesting. And I know I certainly do it. I think I've learned to get better at it, but lots of
Mhm.
us do it. Someone gives us a compliment and our initial response is to push it away.
Yeah, deflection.
Right, and so, like, that is such a curious thing because especially when it comes to how we're nourishing our body or how we're feeling, and I love that you're mentioning that one of our responses is not just to verbally push it away, but then to physically sabotage ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting because I've had different conversations with different clients about this. Like one of my clients, she's like, tell me how great I look. I love it. Right. Like, I please, but that's kind of an exception, because most women, we start to get attention around our bodies.
Mhm,
And, it's very uncomfortable. It can trigger a memory of something, stressful that happened historically. Or this question can come up. So you're complimenting me on my body. Okay. Does this mean that you didn't love me as I was when I was heavier?
what
Like,
about the rest of me?
what about the rest of me? Exactly. Right. And like, okay, so I'm thinner. So now I'm successful. Now I'm accepted. Now I'm this. And, of course, that is kind of an outpicturing of a lot of internalized shame, like the
Mhm,
shame that we carry. So that's like a lot of the work that I do is about dismantling the shame, but then also resourcing yourself
mhm,
for that inevitable time. Somebody's going to say something stupid. Somebody's going to say something that triggers you. It is going to happen when you lose 50, 75, 100 pounds. It's going to happen. So, how do we um, navigate that without taking ourselves all the way back to square one?
mm.
Yeah.
So question, like, you're talking about large weight loss goals for people.
Mhm.
I would think this even happens with small weight loss goals. Someone who loses 10 pounds, like you can have a thinner face or, a different profile with just as little as, 7 to 10 pounds.
Right.
And so even that can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
One of the other questions that I have for you, I'm just curious. So you're talking about, these two opposing forces between wanting to be yourself and wanting to be attached, how that can overwhelm you. Is there a potential for that to be exacerbated by an adverse childhood event? Somebody important
Oh,
died
absolutely.
or yeah. So and does that does that in some way trigger things or make it worse when we find ourselves in that situation where we have to choose between self-sabotage and self-love?
Sure, I think it certainly can, and it does to the degree to which that adverse event is unresolved,
Mm,
and I would say unintegrated. So the main tool that I use in my work with my women, through my Women Food and Forgiveness Academy, is a tool called EFT tapping. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Probably a
tapping, yeah,
lot of people.
such a great tool.
It is such a great tool, and in short, like, one of the main things that tapping does is it helps to downregulate the midbrain, the limbic system of the brain, which is where our traumatic associative memories can be stored.
Mhm,
So I have worked with women who have been through inconceivable adverse experiences. And, after we're done tapping, it has no more impact than like this pencil that I'm holding. So it really depends on how easily activated that stress response can be. You
mm.
know, when something comes up that kind of mainlines our memory back into that childhood experience, it's subconscious, it's completely reflexive. Using tapping can just help to kind of calm the whole thing down and say, okay, oh, that's over now. You're
Yeah,
in present time. This person is not your father or whatever.
sure. Well, so here's an interesting question then. There are I think it takes a lot to become aware of the fact that you're self-sabotaging. So many of us, up until a certain point, probably do it very unconsciously, and then we begin to notice, and we're like, "Oh, did it again."
Mm.
Like, how do we stop ourselves? How do we get to that point and learn how to recognize it and how to stop before we sort of fall off that cliff?
Yeah, that's such a good question because it can be so like,
Mhm.
so impulsive or so unconscious. Well, Mira, I think this is where number one, having a mentor is helpful.
Mhm.
So one thing I like to say is, we can't see our own eyeball.
Good
So
point.
yeah, so having somebody who works with you over time, who
Mhm.
can track your patterns and say, wait a second, is there a pattern going on here? So that's
Mhm.
number one. Um, the other piece is doing tapping,
Mhm.
or using some somatic tool to just help to break that pattern. And then here's the spoiler, the secret wisdom of sabotage. The secret wisdom of sabotage is that when we sabotage ourselves, it's our soul's way of trying to slow down our progress when it doesn't feel safe to move forward. Yeah,
Wow,
right?
that's huge.
Yes, and then when you start to when we, all of us, right? Because I never sabotage myself, right? Because, like, when we start to recognize this, there's a lot more room for forgiveness,
Mm,
a lot more room for mercy,
mm.
and, uh, it's kind of like the analogy of, like, you walk down the street, you fall in the pothole. Okay, then you walk down the same street, you fall in the pothole, then you walk down, you go 1 foot in the pothole, and you pull yourself out and move, and then you just walk down a different street. So, I think it comes down to awareness,
Mhm.
willingness, and the most important is support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is really big, and so I guess one of the questions I have that, that you've given us a lot of different tools and a lot of different things to think about. What would be How would someone begin the process of identifying which tool is going to be a good starting point for them in
Mm,
order to be able, because we all come at it from so many different things in our lived experience, our history, our mental chatter, whatever. How do
yeah.
you figure out where to start?
Yeah, another great question. There will almost invariably be some intuition, some hunch, some whisper. Maybe you'll get a dream. I heard someone say that, prayer is how we talk to the divine,
Mhm.
meditation is how we listen to the divine, and then intuition is how the divine speaks to us.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So especially as women, we've been gaslighted for centuries around our intuition and around our deeper wisdom and invalidated. So reclaiming that power of intuitive knowing, I think is really, really key. And the way will be shown.
I also really like that invitation for people to slow down, because I think one of the challenges that we run into so often is we're surrounded by a social media industry that shows us what it wants us to see, whether
Mm,
that's reality or not. And everything is just moving so fast that we somehow feel bad if we have to stop and think about something.
Mhm. Don't even get me started on the social media and on the technology, even though we're here talking over Zoom. Um,
I know, right? I'm
so you
grateful for that. I'm grateful for that, but by the same token, I also recognize that I think for so many of us, it's become so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that happens is I so many of my clients, especially those who are dealing with weight loss issues, the biggest thing that I hear from them is, "Oh, look at X and I have no willpower." And those 2 things appear in
Mm,
one sentence, and that's just so damaging on so many levels. I'd love it if you could take just a second to talk about the willpower myth.
yeah. Well, again, I mean, again, it circles back to the secret wisdom of sabotage. So, in the times when you have thought, oh, I don't have willpower, again, that could be your soul's way of just slowing you down when it's not safe to succeed. So, this is again where a tool like tapping can come in because you don't need, I don't, you don't need willpower. And I know that like a lot of drug ads are saying that now, like you don't need willpower, but um you can go beyond willpower. Let's
Mhm.
put it that way. So a lot in the academy, we don't focus on weight loss per se. We focus on really it's a holistic approach to metabolic and emotional healing.
Mhm.
And when that is put in place, the body finds its naturally comfortable size,
Yeah.
and the weight comes off in its own divine perfect timing, and there doesn't have to be a big deal about it.
Wow.
The weight loss, as you know, Mira, like obesity isn't a disease in itself.
Mhm.
It's a symptom, it's a consequence of
Right.
of metabolic devastation. The collective metabolic landscape has been, decimated. And
And part of
certain
the
of us pay the cost higher than others, but when we repair that metabolic integrity, the body finds its own weight naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I love that you said that because what I was gonna mention is part of the challenge that we run into is no 2 bodies are exactly the same, and
yeah,
what worked for one body doesn't work for another, and so I love that you're pointing out the metabolic side of things as well, because
absolutely.
people can have metabolically very different responses, and then we're also now folding in this self-care and reflective listening and really paying attention.
Yeah. I heard the other day that intermittent fasting is the most Googled health term.
Mm,
And what about intermittent technology fasting? I really think we owe it to ourselves and to our world to become much more conscious and intentional about our relationship to technology. So, if a woman is having the feeling of, oh, look at her and I have no willpower, so much of that is being driven by the technology machine. What happens when we just say, whoa, and just step out of it? We really do begin to claim our health, take our health back.
that is such an important point. Thank you so much for bringing that up because I think we tend to forget just how much we see or how much we're exposed to. So
Yeah.
definitely a good reminder. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. No, and that actually was really good. And I think I get very frustrated sometimes for people because um we're not all 20 with high metabolisms anymore.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
And yet we're being fed this myth that we should all look like that, and I get very angry when I see celebs who are like, "Oh, she just had a baby 4 weeks ago, look at how fabulous she looks." I'm like, Please go away." Like,
Yeah,
just
I know. And Oprah now, she's become the
she's
poster girl
become
for Ozempic,
I know.
and she's skinny. And one of my clients is like, "I'm so tempted to take it."
And part of the problem is they're not talking about all the challenges. There is a growing number of people who are starting to experience gastroparesis because of
Gastroparesis, yep,
Ozempic, yep, and
yep.
then it significantly disrupts your blood sugar metabolism.
Well, it your whole digestive process goes offline.
Yeah.
That's the
Right.
gastroparesis, right? Like, you just I
So
one of my cli
gastroparesis is a paralysis of the gut. But
yeah, there you go.
right, and what Ozempic does is it not only stops that, but it also, it it takes away the desire for food. A lot of snack food companies, believe it or not, in the industry things, a lot of snack food companies that I'm seeing are really upset about Ozempic because their profits are down because people are not snacking as much, which is in a way kind of
Weird,
funny, in a way kind of
bizarre.
fun. Yeah. The other really weird side effect that's starting to creep up tiny, tiny amounts, but apparently there is a certain subset of people who are losing their libido when they take Ozempic
Sure, sure,
because it's
sure.
impacting their brain.
Yeah, and that's, I was hearing the other day they're giving Paxlovid to, kids now?
What? I did not hear that.
Wait, is it Paxlovid? Hold on, that's not right. Lexapro,
Oh,
wrong one.
okay. Yeah.
Wrong one. Paxlovid was the COVID drug. Okay,
Oh.
Lexapro, to kids. And, we're giving SSRIs and benzos and all this to kids, and one of the side effects of that is loss of libido, and what the speaker was saying that I heard was, she said, "These children are gonna grow up and they will never have had a sexual impulse." Now, isn't that curious? Yeah,
That's
yeah,
horrible.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. So,
Oh,
that's
crazy.
a whole I mean, that's a whole other interview. Excuse me, it's a whole other interview because
Yeah.
yeah, the Ozempic thing is interesting because I've been really, really debating about it, and I think I need to say that I can't work with you if you're gonna take it, because if you're gonna throw a monkey wrench into the process, how can I possibly help you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Such a scary thing. Marcella, this has been so amazing. You shared so much great information with us. I'm really grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you so
Um,
much, Mira.
absolutely. And I know before we hopped on to record, you had shared that you had a secret wisdom of sabotage gift that you
Mhm.
wanted to offer. Can you share with us about that just a little bit?
Sure, it's a recording of a virtual retreat that I did a few years ago, back when everybody was on Zoom, back in the day. Um, and it unpacks everything that I talked about today just a little bit more about, the two conflicting early life impulses. And then the most important thing to do when you find yourself in an act of sabotage, I talk about that in the course. And then I guide you through some tapping to help you dismantle the impulse to sabotage and replace it with, genuine self-care. So,
Oh, that is lovely. Thank you so much.
oh, you're so welcome.
Absolutely. So for everyone who's watching, I will definitely put that link down below. I will put a link to Marcella's Academy so that you can connect with her and learn more from her. I know she has a great Substack. I'll put that in there as well. Yeah, if you want to subscribe to that, that would be amazing. And Marcella, again, thank you so much for being here. It was wonderful to talk with you. And for everybody who's watching, thank you so much for joining us, listening in, and as always, remember to make today a healthy day.
Oh, yay. Bye.